How do we know that Israel aims to starve the population of Gaza and ethnically cleanse it? How do we know this is part of a larger agenda and it's not an accident? Because they say so. The Israeli government openly says it. This is Amichai Eliyahu, who is the heritage minister. He's the son of one of the most important state-funded Israeli rabbis, Shmuel Eliyahu. He's previously called for dropping a nuke on Gaza. Now he says Israel's racing ahead to wipe out Gaza and will make it Jewish. This is, Israeli media is reporting this. The government is racing ahead for Gaza to be wiped out. Thank God we are wiping out this evil. We are pushing this population that has been educated on Mein Kampf. And he says, all Gaza will be Jewish. And then he finally concludes by saying, we aren't racists. It's like, yeah, that you're not racist. The woke left will only call you a racist. You're not really a racist. They're openly saying this. And there was a fascinating exchange, unless I lost it here. Yeah, there was a fascinating exchange between a Israeli propagandist in the US. Well, he's not Israeli. He's just kind of like one of these stooges whose whole career is based on defending anything Israel does. His name is Corey Walker. And he basically says that Amichai Eliyahu is a fringe and non-representative minister in Israel. It's reckless rhetoric. It makes Israel look bad. But just some Israeli politicians are just, are just reckless, but they don't represent the true will of the Israeli people. Then Beitar comes in, Beitar USA, which has been providing the Trump administration with lists of student green card holders to deport. He's not considered fringe and unaware why Americans keep saying such untrue things. Is the finance minister and national security minister also not mainstream, referring to Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir? It's simply untrue. They represent the will and government of the people of Israel. And that's correct. And then they go on to destroy Corey Walker, who's worried more about Israel's image than about the reality of Israeli society, which is fully mobilized in support of genocide and is now going full Auschwitz. And Beitar is right here. What happens in Israel is these figures from like Otzma Yehudit, the Kahanist party, come out and issue these genocidal statements, and then Likud and other parties like the Jewish Home Party, other right-wing parties, they sort of have to channel that sentiment into policy and appease them without allowing them to gain ground within their traditional base. So those parties don't win as many seats, but their opinions fall on fertile soil, as the Penn State poll that was taken last month shows. Over 65% of Jewish Israelis support the full ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And you can see it play out in the behavior of Jewish Israelis, especially Jewish Israeli youth, who are consistently more racist and more fascist than their elders. I mean, this was at a theater in Jerusalem earlier this month. Zionist youth chanting death to Arabs and attacking Arab workers. What made them so mad is they found Arabs just working. That's what made them do this. Now they're physically assaulting them. You can see like they're wearing knit kippas. These are what are known as like shrugim, religious nationalist youth. They all go into the military. They have messianic fascist ideas. They all want ethnic cleansing. They're represented fully in Netanyahu's coalition. All the bills that are trying to force the ultra-Orthodox into the army are trying to turn the ultra-Orthodox youth youth into these kids. Now they're chanting Mevet La'Arabim, death to Arabs. This is like the future of Israel, and it's never going to go to peace as long as it will never embrace peace as long as it's an ethno-supremacist structured society.
It's one of the few countries I can think of, maybe the only one, where the younger generation is extremely even more fanatical than the older generation, which already is a pretty fanatical generation. I mean, as represented by someone like Netanyahu. But the youth, and like usually with young people, they get more progressive. They're more compassionate.
Yeah.
But in Israel, it's the exact opposite. It's a scary thought. I don't know what you do with this radicalized state armed with nuclear weapons. It's just like the existential question hanging over the future of the planet. What do you do with this crazy state full of rabid, radicalized people whose youth are even more extreme than the older generation, which is already a very extreme generation? And you can generalize when it comes to Israel because the polls show it. The polls show a majority of people support mass murder in Gaza, support ethnic cleansing in Gaza, don't see Palestinians as equal human beings. That's what the polls even show. What do you do with that society? I have no idea.
Yeah, what do you do with it? It's like what was done with ISIS after they were defeated in Raqqa. They were all basically put in a gigantic camp. Or at least the women. The men were killed or jailed by the Kurdish SDF. And then the women were all just put in this gigantic camp at Rukban, and they're just being warehoused there because they are so radicalized and their children are being radicalized. That was the solution for the subaltern Muslims of Syria. What happens if the so-called self-proclaimed Jewish state is dismantled with this radicalized Jewish ISIS population? Where do they go? What will they do? What do you do with them? Like, do you really want a bunch of Kahanist maniacs and swindling Mali pushers in your society?
Yeah. And meanwhile, I don't think we've even covered, because it happened since our last stream, the killing of a Palestinian American. Maybe we did, but another Palestinian American was killed in the occupied West Bank, 20 years old, worked at an ice cream shop with his father owns in Florida, murdered by settlers. And that gets some attention in the U.S., but not even nearly enough. Even Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador, was forced to call this terrorism, and that's fine, but it's state sanctioned. It's endorsed by the government. It's endorsed by the U.S. government, which helps subsidize those settlers who live in the West Bank.
Those were the same, settlers of the same religious nationalist mentality as those youth we saw rioting in Jerusalem at a major theater in Jerusalem, is just to violently slaughter with clubs and their own fists any Palestinian in their midst. It's just happening. And so one American citizen got killed out of the hundreds who've been killed in these kind of price tag settler attacks throughout the past year and the past 2 years. Record numbers of killings in the West Bank, vigilante killings, emboldened and enabled by the Israeli military that stands guard for the settlers and deputizes the settlers, has been giving them uniforms and American supplied rifles to carry out what used to be vigilante violence in order to enact a clear plan of ethnic cleansing and annexation, which has been approved formally by the Israeli Knesset. And one American gets killed, forcing Christian Zionist Mike Huckabee to take a break from sitting in the gallery to support Netanyahu at his corruption trial and actually call it out. And I mean, you think about this uber radicalized population that's growing rapidly within Israel's Jewish society. Within Tel Aviv, the enlightened public doesn't want them in their immediate midst. So the settlements actually serve a utility for the Ashkenazi elite that lives on Israel's coast, in Haifa, in West Jerusalem, and in Tel Aviv, which is to keep them over there where they can do what they will with the Palestinians. And it's why I don't know if the Ashkenazi elite would want to give up those settlements, because then the fanatics and freaks will be in their own backyard. But then imagine if Israel is dismantled as this state which perpetually is carrying out warfare against all of its neighbors, threatening nuclear war with Iran, carrying out genocide in the Gaza Strip, building a concentration camp, causing unprecedented surge of anti-Jewish attitudes around the world as it holds up the symbol of our faith community while it carries out this sadistic war. Imagine if it's dismantled. Where will they go and what will they do? Which society would take them on? Obviously, it has to be Germany. This should all fall on the backs of the Germans. But look at what they've created. Look at what the West has done there. This is what the West has done. And they forced it on the back of the Palestinians. So now, Israelis there's talk of not allowing them to travel to Thailand because they're so violent and so disruptive there. And there was this incident 2 days ago on a Spanish budget flight where French Israeli youth started spitting on flight attendants and chanting, what else? Mevet la'Aravim, death to Arabs, on a flight. And of course, Israel plays the victim, the ultimate cry bully. This is Amichai Chikli, a literal Israeli spy in the US. He's the Minister of Diaspora Affairs. He's sponsoring all these Israeli surveillance initiatives and propaganda initiatives, pumping Israeli money into the US, circumventing our Foreign Agent Registration Act laws. And now he's complaining that these youth were arrested and kicked off a flight. The woman who was arrested and beaten is the director of the Kinneret summer camp. 50 French Jewish children aged 10 to 15 were singing Hebrew songs on the plane. Oh yeah, that famous Hebrew song, Death to Arabs. Maybe they had some other Hebrew songs that were just as fascist. The Vueling airline crew said that Israel's a terrorist state and forced the children off the aircraft. They're now in Valencia. In line with Hamas's campaign of lies echoed by Al Jazeera, Haaretz, and others, we are seeing numerous severe anti-Semitic incidents recently. This is one of the most serious. So it's an anti-Semitic incident when a mob of like psychotic children of the corn youth start chanting death to Arabs on a flight and disrupting. Apparently they were tampering with emergency exits, spitting on flight attendants. Here's the statement. And then Chikli gets destroyed in the replies. Here's the statement from the airline. Passengers disembarked for disruptive behavior. The actions of the onboard staff were solely in response to behavior that compromised the integrity of the flight as well as the safety of passengers. The group mishandled emergency equipment and actively disrupted the mandatory safety demonstration, ignoring instructions from cabin crew. The group's behavior continued to be aggressive. Some individuals displayed a violent attitude towards the authorities, which even led to the arrest of one of the group's members. Well, that was ignored. No, this is anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitism to not let Israelis do whatever they want. And for the first time, Belgium has arrested Israeli soldiers accused of war crimes, thanks to the Nazi hunters of our time, the Hind Rajab Foundation. We just published a documentary at the Grayzone on Israeli soldiers seeking shelter in Javier Milei's Argentina. Javier Milei is a member of the Chabad cult, one of the closest leaders in the world to Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. And the Patagonia region has been swamped with Israeli military veterans. So this is a problem for the whole world, this monster that they created.